Daniel Carter sat in the human delegations section of the Galactic Council chambers and tried not to show his frustration. He had been Earth's ambassador to the Council for 12 years now. 12 long years of watching the same pattern repeat itself over and over again. The massive chamber stretched out before him like a cathedral built for giants. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled the curved rows of seats. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star maps and trade routes and military deployments. The whole thing was designed to make anyone feel small and insignificant. High Chancellor Vexith stood at the central podium. The tall, insectoid leader's mandibles clicked together as he spoke. His translator rendered his words into flat, emotionless tones that somehow still managed to sound dismissive. The human proposal is, once again, rejected, Vexith announced. The Council has no need for increased patrols in the outer territories. The reports of pirate activity are clearly exaggerated. Daniel felt Lisa Morgan shift in the seat beside him. She was Earth's secondary envoy, younger than Daniel by 15 years, but already showing the same worn edges that came from dealing with the Council. Her hand tightened on her datapad. "Ambassador Carter," she whispered. "We have 17 confirmed attacks in the last month alone. How can they just ignore the evidence?" Daniel did not answer. He had learned years ago that evidence did not matter here. Logic did not matter. The Council operated on pride and ancient hierarchies that humanity had never been part of. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives, the species that still used chemical rockets when they first reached their own moon. Never mind that humanity had been part of the Council for 80 years now. Never mind that human mediators had resolved countless disputes between member species. Never mind that human patrol ships kept the peace in sectors that other species found too boring or unprofitable to bother with. Councillor Threven rose from his seat. The amphibious being's skin shifted through colors as he spoke, a sign of his emotional state. "Perhaps we should at least review the human data before making a final decision." "There is no need." Vexith cut him off. "Human paranoia is well documented. They see threats everywhere because they come from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They cannot understand that civilized space operates differently." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Daniel heard it and felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not the first time he had heard that particular insult. Deathworlders, primitives, warmongers. The Council had 100 different ways to say the same thing. Humans did not belong here. Lisa stood up suddenly. "With respect, High Chancellor, our patrols have prevented 43 separate conflicts in the last year alone. We have documentation of every incident." "Sit down, Envoy Morgan," Vexith said. "The Council is aware of humanity's tendency to interfere where they are not wanted. Your species seems to believe that violence is the solution to every problem." "We prevented violence," Lisa said, her voice rising. "We stopped those conflicts before they started. By threatening military action, yes. We are aware of your methods." Vexith's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps if your species spent less time playing soldier and more time learning proper diplomatic protocol, you would be taken more seriously." Daniel put a hand on Lisa's arm and gently pulled her back into her seat. He stood up himself, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The chamber quieted slightly. Even the species that looked down on humanity knew that Daniel Carter did not speak unless he had something important to say. "High Chancellor," Daniel began. "Earth has been a loyal member of this Council for 8 decades. We have contributed our ships, our resources, and our people to the common good. We have asked for nothing in return, except to be treated as equals. And you have been treated exactly as you deserve," Vexith said. "Then we agree on something at last," Daniel replied. His voice was calm, but Lisa noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "Because humanity deserves better than this." The chamber fell completely silent now. Daniel looked around at the thousands of faces, scales, carapaces, and forms that filled the room. How many of them had come to human mediators when their disputes turned violent? How many had relied on human patrol ships to keep their trade routes safe? How many had quietly asked for human help while publicly mocking Earth's contributions? For 80 years, Daniel continued. Humanity has served this council faithfully. We have protected your colonies when pirates attacked. We have mediated your disputes when ancient hatreds threatened to explode into war. We have maintained communication networks and navigation beacons that keep this entire sector connected. And what have we received in return? You received the honor of membership, Vexith said. You received access to technologies and knowledge far beyond your primitive understanding. You should be grateful. Grateful, Daniel repeated. He pulled out a small data chip from his jacket pocket. This chip contains my resignation as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. More than that, it contains Earth's formal withdrawal from the Council entirely. The silence broke. Hundreds of delegates began talking at once. Vexith's mandibles snapped shut, and then open again. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious in my life, Daniel said. He placed the chip on his desk, where everyone could see it. Effective immediately. Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We will no longer provide patrol services outside our own territory. We will no longer mediate disputes between council members. We will no longer maintain infrastructure that benefits the council. We are done. Lisa stood beside him. She looked pale but determined. She had known this was coming. They had discussed it for months, sent messages back and forth to Earth, debated every possible outcome, but knowing something was coming and actually doing it were two very different things. This is foolish, Threven called out. Ambassador Carter, please reconsider. Your species has much to offer the Council. Then perhaps the Council should have considered that before today, Daniel said. But you did not. And now you will learn what the galaxy looks like without humanity holding it together. Vexith recovered his composure. His translator actually managed to convey smugness this time. You are making a grave mistake, Ambassador. Or should I say, former Ambassador. Humanity needs the Council far more than the Council needs humanity. You will come crawling back within a year, begging to be readmitted. We will see, Daniel said simply. He gathered his things and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed him, and so did the handful of other human staff members who worked at the Council headquarters. Their footsteps echoed in the massive chamber. Behind them, the Council erupted into arguments and discussions. But Daniel also heard something else. He heard laughter. He heard relief. He heard a dozen different delegates celebrating the departure of the troublesome humans who always complicated things with their insistence on fairness and justice and protecting the weak. As the doors closed behind them, Lisa finally spoke. Did we just make the biggest mistake in human history? Daniel looked back at the sealed doors. Beyond them lay a galactic civilization that had taken humanity for granted for 8 decades. No, he said quietly. But they just made theirs. 3 months later, the first reports would start coming in. Pirate attacks surging in sectors that human patrols once protected. Trade disputes escalating into violence without human mediators to calm things down. Communication networks failing without human maintenance crews. But that would come later. For now, Daniel Carter walked out of the Galactic Council chambers for the last time and wondered if anyone inside truly understood what humanity had been doing for them all these years. He suspected they were about to find out. Captain Greg Allen stood on the bridge of the Defender and watched the stars through the forward viewport. The human vessel was not the biggest ship in space, not by a long shot. Council warships dwarfed it in size and firepower, but the Defender was fast, well-armed, and crewed by people who knew what they were doing. Captain, Commander Patricia Hayes, called from the tactical station. We are receiving a distress signal. Merchant vessel under attack. Coordinates bearing 347, Mark 18. Greg checked the navigation display. The attack was happening just outside human territory, in what used to be a jointly patrolled zone. 3 months ago, his crew would have responded immediately. 3 months ago, humanity was still part of the Galactic Council. How many hostiles? He asked. Sensors show 4 pirate vessels. Small raiders, probably Krev class. The merchant ship has minimal weapons. Patricia looked up from her console. Sir, they are requesting immediate assistance. Greg pulled up the sector map. The attack was happening right on the border, in a shipping lane that dozens of species used every day. When humans patrolled this area, pirates stayed away. They knew that human ships responded fast and hit hard. But humans did not patrol here anymore. "Hail the merchant ship," Greg ordered. The communication channel opened. A panicked voice filled the bridge, the translator working overtime to convert the alien's rapid speech into English. "This is the cargo vessel Swift Prophet. We are under attack. Raiders have breached our hull. We need help immediately. Swift Prophet, this is Captain Allen of the Human Ship Defender. What is your cargo, and who are you registered with?" There was a pause. Then the voice came back, confused and desperate. "What?" "We are registered with the Thanari Trade Consortium. Our cargo is medical supplies and agricultural equipment." "Why does this matter?" "We are dying here." Patricia walked over to stand beside Greg's chair. She kept her voice low. "Sir, we are not obligated to respond. This is outside our patrol zone now. Council regulations specifically state that each species is responsible for their own territory." "I know the regulations, Commander," Greg said. He watched the tactical display as the pirate ships continued their attack. "Open a channel to the merchant ship." Full encryption. The channel opened again. Greg leaned forward. "Swift Prophet, this is Captain Allen. We can help you. But things have changed. Humanity is no longer part of the Council. We do not provide free patrol services anymore. If you want our assistance, we need payment." "Payment?" The voice sounded shocked. "But you are a Council patrol ship." "We were," Greg corrected. "Not anymore. Those are the new rules. You want our help? You pay for it. Medical supplies, spare parts, fuel credits, whatever you can offer." There was arguing in the background, voices shouting in languages the translator could not quite catch. Then the original speaker came back. "Fine, yes, we will pay. We have emergency medical kits, Class 7 components, anything, just help us." Greg nodded to Patricia. "Battle stations. Weapons free. Navigation. Plot and intercept course." The Defender's engines flared bright as the ship accelerated toward the attack. Greg felt the familiar pressure of high-speed maneuvers pushing him back into his command chair. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, calling out readings and adjustments. "Approaching engagement range in 30 seconds, the weapons officer announced. "Target the pirate vessels. Warning shots first. If they do not break off, disable their engines." Greg kept his voice calm. He had done this hundreds of times before. The only difference was that now he was getting paid for it. The Defender dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on top of the pirate formation. The human ship's weapons opened fire, bright lances of energy that cut across space and slammed into the raiders' shields. The pirates scattered immediately. "Pirate vessels are breaking off," Patricia reported. "They are running." "Let them go," Greg ordered. "Hail the merchant ship. Get a damage report." The Swift Prophet was badly damaged but still intact. The hull breach was small, already sealed by emergency systems. No casualties, though several crew members were injured. Greg had his medical team beam over supplies and personnel to help with treatment. 3 hours later, the transfer was complete. The merchant ship's captain, a being that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard, appeared on the communication screen. His feathers were ruffled and his eyes were wide. "Captain Allen," the merchant captain said, "I must thank you for your assistance. But I must also ask, why did you demand payment?" "Human ships have never done this before." "Human ships were part of the Council before," Greg replied. "We provided these services because we believed in the Council's mission. We believed we were all working together. But the Council made it very clear that humanity was not valued. So now we charge for our time and resources like everyone else." The merchant captain's feathers smoothed down slightly. "I see. And if we had not been able to pay?" Greg considered the question. "Then we would have watched you die and moved on. Those are the new rules." Council space, council problems. The communication ended. Patricia came to stand beside Greg again. That was harsh, sir. That was honest, Greg said. For 80 years, humanity gave everything to the council. We protected their ships, mediated their disputes, maintained their infrastructure, and they called us primitives. They laughed at us. They took everything we gave and treated us like servants. He turned to look at his second-in-command. I am done being taken for granted, Commander. The galaxy needs to learn that nothing is free. The Defender continued its patrol route, staying carefully within human territory. But over the next few weeks, Greg saw the pattern repeating. More distress calls, more attacks, more desperate pleas for help from ships in sectors that used to be safe. At a border trading station called Haven Point, Station Master Kelvin Brooks was seeing the same thing from a different angle. The human-run station sat right on the edge of human space, a stopping point for traders and travelers from a dozen different species. It had always been busy, but now it was packed. Kelvin walked through the crowded corridors and saw fear on every face. Merchants who used to travel freely through council space now huddled in human territory, afraid to venture out. The trade routes were breaking down. Pirates operated openly in areas that used to be patrolled. And nobody seemed to know what to do about it. A Thenari trader named Gentar approached Kelvin in the station's main hub. The tall, four-armed being looked exhausted. Station Master Brooks, I need to speak with you. It is urgent. Kelvin gestured to a quieter corner. What is wrong? Gentar? Everything is wrong, the trader said. His translator made his voice sound flat, but his body language showed his distress. I have been a merchant for 30 years. I know every trade route in this sector. But now I cannot travel safely. Pirates attack every convoy. The routes through the Kelvin Expanse are completely shut down, and the Council does nothing. The Council has its own patrol ships, Kelvin pointed out. Council ships do not patrol like human ships did, Gentar said. Council species only protect their own interests. They do not care about the common good. Without human patrols, there is no coordination, no shared defense. It is chaos. Kelvin had heard this complaint before. It was becoming a common theme. What do you want me to do about it? Hire human ships to escort my convoys, Gentar said. I will pay whatever price you ask. I cannot operate without protection. Then hire them directly, Kelvin suggested. Humanity is not running a charity anymore. You want escorts, you negotiate contracts with ship captains. Gentar's arms gestured in what might have been frustration. But this is wrong. The Council is supposed to provide security. That is the entire purpose of the organization. Then maybe you should talk to the Council about that, Kelvin said. He was not unsympathetic, but he was also not interested in making excuses for the Council's failures. Humanity spent 80 years doing the Council's job for free. We were told we were not needed. Well, now you get to see what the galaxy looks like without us. Over the following weeks, the reports kept coming in. Entire sectors were going dark. Their communication networks failing without human maintenance crews. Disputes that would have been resolved peacefully were escalating into armed conflicts. Species that had relied on human mediation were now trying to handle problems themselves and making everything worse. The Council's official response was that these were temporary adjustments. The member species just needed time to reorganize their patrol schedules and dispute resolution procedures. Everything would be fine. But Kelvin could see the truth in the frightened faces of the merchants and travelers who crowded into Haven Point every day. The galaxy was not fine. The galaxy was falling apart, and somewhere in the Galactic Council chambers, he hoped, someone was finally starting to realize what humanity had been doing all these years. Greg Allen sat in his quarters aboard the Defender and reviewed the day's reports. 6 distress calls. 4 successful rescues. All paid for in supplies or credits. 2 ships that could not pay and were left to their fate. It made him feel sick, but he was following Earth's new policy to the letter. His communication console chimed. It was a message from Earth, from the Admiralty. Greg opened it and read quickly. The message confirmed what he already suspected. Across human space, every patrol ship was seeing the same thing. The galaxy was in trouble, and it was only going to get worse. The message ended with a simple statement: hold the line. Do not provide free services. Let them learn. Greg closed the message and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying because humans were no longer willing to help for free. But somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was learning a hard lesson about taking people for granted. He just hoped they learned it before everything fell apart completely. Dr. Helen Foster sat in her laboratory on Earth and watched the Galactic Communication Network fall apart in real time. Her screens showed a map of known space, with thousands of nodes representing relay stations, beacons, and communication hubs. 6 months ago, the entire network had glowed green, showing healthy connections across hundreds of light years. Now the map was turning red. Another relay station went offline. Her assistant called out, "That is the 47th one this week." Helen made a note in her log. 47 stations in 1 week. The rate of failure was accelerating. She had tried to warn people about this. She had sent reports to Earth's government, explaining exactly what was going to happen when human maintenance crews stopped servicing the network. But reading a report and watching it actually occur were two different things. The communication network that connected the Galactic Council was a patchwork of technologies from dozens of different species. Every race had contributed their own designs and methods. It should have been a disaster, all those incompatible systems trying to work together. But it had functioned smoothly for centuries because of one critical factor: human engineers had made it work. Humanity did not have the most advanced technology. The Council species loved to remind them of that fact. But humans had something else. They had the ability to understand and integrate different systems. They could take a Varinthian data relay, a Keltharan power system, and a Phyrexian signal booster, and make them all work together seamlessly. And they had done this across thousands of stations, creating a network that nobody else fully understood. Now, those same human engineers were back on Earth. The Council's own technicians were trying to maintain the network, but they only understood their own species' contributions. When a Varinthian relay connected to a Keltharan power system failed, nobody knew how to fix it because no Varinthian understood Keltharan technology, and no Keltharan understood Varinthian designs. Only the humans had understood both. And the humans were gone. Helen's communication console lit up. It was a priority message from Admiral Stephen Wright, commander of Earth's defensive fleet. She accepted the call and his face appeared on her screen. "Dr. Foster," Stephen said. His voice was grave. "I need your analysis. How long until the network experiences total collapse?" Helen pulled up her projections. "At the current rate of failure, critical nodes will start going dark within 3 weeks. Once that happens, entire sectors will lose contact with each other. We are looking at a cascade failure that will fragment the galaxy into isolated regions." "That matches our intelligence," Stephen said. "But it is not just the communications network. We are receiving reports of navigation beacon failures, emergency response systems going offline, and automated defense platforms attacking friendly ships because their identification protocols are corrupted. All systems that humans maintained," Helen said quietly. "Exactly." Stephen looked tired. He was a career military officer, one of the best tactical minds in human space, but even he had not anticipated how quickly things would fall apart. "Doctor, I need to know something. Did we do this on purpose?" Quote, Helen understood what he was asking. "Did we deliberately build ourselves into critical systems so the Council would need us?" "No, Admiral. We did it because nobody else would. Every time a problem came up, every time a system failed or species could not work together, the Council asked humans to fix it, and we did. We fixed everything because that is what we do." Stephen nodded slowly. "And now they are paying the price for taking us for granted." Across the galaxy, the consequences were becoming impossible to ignore. Ambassador Daniel Carter, now back on Earth, received daily reports about the deteriorating situation. He read them in his home office, the same room where he had written his resignation speech 6 months ago. The reports painted a grim picture. The Council member species, without human mediators to resolve their disputes, had fallen back on their old methods. Those methods usually involved threats, military posturing, and economic pressure. What would have been a minor disagreement 6 months ago was now escalating into open conflict. The Keltharan Federation and the Vorinthian Collective were on the brink of war over a border dispute that human diplomats had been managing peacefully for 20 years. Neither side remembered how to compromise. They only knew how to demand and threaten. The Phyrexian Assembly had split into 3 competing factions, each claiming to be the legitimate government. Human mediators used to keep those factions talking to each other. Now they were mobilizing military forces instead. And everywhere, the Krell Empire was expanding. The Krell were a hostile power that bordered Council space. For decades, they had been testing Council defenses, probing for weaknesses. Human patrol ships and intelligence networks had kept them in check, providing early warning of Krell movements and coordinating Council responses. But the humans were gone now. And the Krell were no longer just testing, they were invading. Daniel received a report about the fall of Theria Prime, a Council world that had been conquered by Krell forces. The planet's defense fleet had been caught completely by surprise because the early warning network had failed. The local Council species had not known the Krell were coming until enemy ships were already in orbit. 3 billion people lived on Theria Prime. Now they were under Krell occupation, and the Galactic Council was arguing about who should lead the Liberation Force, instead of actually organizing one. Daniel set the report aside and stared at his wall. He had maps there, showing human trade routes and patrol zones and diplomatic postings. 80 years of careful work, building relationships and solving problems, and keeping the peace. All of it gone because the Council could not see past their own pride. His communication console chimed. It was Councillor Threvan, one of the few Council members who had opposed humanity's dismissal. Daniel accepted the call. Threvan's image appeared, his skin shifting through colors that indicated deep distress. Ambassador Carter, I apologize for disturbing you, but I must speak with someone who understands what is happening. I am not an ambassador anymore, Daniel reminded him. No, but you are still the person who warned us this would occur. Threvan's voice was heavy with regret. I did not listen. None of us listened. We thought humanity was exaggerating the problems. We thought you were trying to make yourselves seem more important than you were. And now? Daniel asked. Now the galaxy is burning, Threvan said simply. 4 Council worlds have fallen to the Krell. 17 member species are engaged in armed conflicts with each other. The communication network is failing. Trade has collapsed, and High Chancellor Vexith still refuses to admit that we need humanity back. Daniel felt a flash of anger. You had 80 years to treat us with respect, Counselor. 80 years to see us as equals instead of primitive newcomers. Why should we come back now? Because people are dying, Threvan said. Not the politicians or the military leaders or the people who made this decision. Innocent civilians. Families. Children. They are dying because the Council is too proud to admit its mistakes. That is not humanity's fault, Daniel said. No, Threvan agreed. It is ours. Completely and entirely ours. But that does not change the fact that you are the only ones who can fix this. You are the only species that knows how to make different peoples work together. You are the only ones who ever cared about protecting the weak instead of dominating them. Daniel thought about Theria Prime. 3 billion people under hostile occupation. How many other worlds would fall before the Council admitted it needed help? How many more people would die because of Vexith's pride? I cannot make this decision alone, Daniel said. Earth's government must decide how to respond. But I will tell you this, Counselor. If the Council wants humanity back, it will not be on the old terms. We will not be treated as servants, or primitives, or expendable resources. We will be equals, or we will not return at all. I understand, Threvan said. I will do everything in my power to convince the Council, but I fear it may already be too late. The call ended. Daniel sat in silence, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Humanity had not wanted to leave the Council. They had wanted to be respected, to be valued, to be treated as partners instead of tools. Was that really too much to ask? Admiral Stephen Wright was dealing with his own problems. His fleet was stretched thin, protecting human space from the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Refugees were flooding into human territory, fleeing from wars and Krell invasions, and collapsing governments. Every day, Stephen received requests for military assistance from Council species. Every day, he had to refuse them. His orders from Earth were clear. Human forces would not intervene in Council space unless Earth's government specifically authorized it, and Earth's government was not feeling particularly charitable toward the Council right now. But Stephen was a military officer, not a politician. He saw the tactical situation clearly. The Krell Empire was winning because the Council could not coordinate a defense. Individual species were fighting alone, using their own tactics and strategies, refusing to cooperate with their neighbors, even in the face of a common enemy. It was exactly what Stephen had warned about years ago. Modern warfare required coordination, shared intelligence, unified command structures. The Council species had none of these things. They had relied on human expertise to provide them, and now that expertise was gone. Stephen pulled up a tactical map showing Krell movements. The enemy was advancing on multiple fronts, conquering worlds that should have been able to defend themselves. But every Council species insisted on defending their own territory in their own way, even when it was clearly not working. He thought about all the times human officers had trained Council military forces, had shared tactical doctrine, had coordinated multi-species operations. The Council had taken all of that knowledge and then dismissed the teachers as primitive warmongers who did not understand civilized warfare. They were learning now what civilized warfare looked like without humans to organize it. It looked like defeat. In a quiet office on the Galactic Council station, High Chancellor Vexith reviewed the same reports that Daniel and Stephen were reading. His mandibles clicked together in agitation as he saw the extent of the crisis. 4 worlds lost, 17 conflicts, network failure, economic collapse. And every report, every analysis, every strategic assessment reached the same conclusion. The Council needed humanity back. They needed human mediators to stop the conflicts. They needed human engineers to fix the networks. They needed human military coordination to fight the Krell. But admitting that meant admitting he had been wrong. It meant acknowledging that the primitive Deathworlders had been holding the entire galactic civilization together. It meant humiliation on a scale that Vexith could barely comprehend. His communication console showed another urgent message. Another world under attack. Another plea for help that nobody could answer. Vexith's mandibles snapped shut. He would not beg humans for help. He would find another way. The Council would solve these problems themselves, as they should have been doing all along. They did not need humanity. Even as he thought it, another relay station failed. Another sector went dark. And somewhere in the growing darkness, the Krell Empire continued its advance. High Chancellor Vexith stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council and knew that he had lost. The vast chamber that had once been filled with confident delegates now held only frightened survivors. 12 member species had withdrawn from the Council entirely, abandoning the alliance to save themselves. The remaining species looked at him with accusing eyes. "The situation is under control," Vexith said, though his translator could not hide the uncertainty in his voice. "Our military forces are regrouping. The Krell advance will be stopped." "With what forces?" demanded the Keltharan representative. "My homeworld is under siege. The Krell fleet surrounds our planet, and we cannot break through. Where are the Council reinforcements you promised?" "They are delayed," Vexith said. "Coordination between our fleets is proving more difficult than anticipated." "Coordination?" Councillor Threven said quietly. "That is an interesting word choice, High Chancellor. Perhaps you mean that our fleets refuse to work together? That each species is defending only their own interests? That we have no unified command structure because we expelled the only species that knew how to create one?" The chamber erupted into angry voices. Vexith tried to restore order. But nobody was listening anymore. They were too busy shouting at each other, blaming each other for the disaster that had befallen the Council. It was the same pattern that had repeated for 9 months now. Argument instead of action. Pride instead of pragmatism. The Varinthian delegate stood up. I am done with this farce. The Varinthian collective is withdrawing from the council, effective immediately. We will seek our own arrangements for protection. You cannot withdraw, Vexith said. We must stand together. Stand together? The Varinthian's laugh was bitter. We have never stood together, High Chancellor. We have competed and bickered and schemed against each other while humans held everything in place. Now the humans are gone, and we finally see what we really are. Selfish, short-sighted fools. The Varinthian delegate left. 3 other species followed. Vexith watched them go and felt his authority crumbling. The council was dying. Killed by its own arrogance, Councillor Threven approached the podium. High Chancellor, I am calling for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. Vexith's mandibles spread in what might have been shock or anger. You dare challenge me now, at our darkest hour? I dare because it is our darkest hour, Threven replied. And because your pride is making it darker with every moment you refuse to do what must be done. I will not beg humans for help, Vexith said. Then you will watch the council die, Threven said simply. Vote, delegates. Does High Chancellor Vexith still have your confidence? The vote was swift and brutal. Vexith lost his position by an overwhelming majority. The council appointed Threven as emergency chancellor, with a single mandate to save what remained of galactic civilization. His first act was to open a secure channel to Earth. President Karen Miller sat in the Situation Room beneath the White House and watched the incoming transmission with her cabinet. She was a career diplomat who had become Earth's leader 2 years ago. She had spent those 2 years watching the Galactic Council dismiss humanity's contributions. Now the council wanted to talk. Threven's image appeared on the main screen. He looked exhausted, his skin cycling through colors that indicated stress and regret. President Miller, I am Emergency Chancellor Threven of the Galactic Council. I am contacting you to request immediate humanitarian and military assistance. That is quite a change from your usual position, Karen said. Her voice was diplomatic but cold. As I recall, the Council's official statement 9 months ago was that humanity was not needed, that we were primitives, playing at civilization. What has changed, Chancellor? Everything, Threven said. We were wrong. Completely. Catastrophically wrong. The Council is collapsing. 7 worlds have fallen to the Krell Empire. 23 member species have withdrawn from the Alliance. Our communication network is failing. Our economy is in ruins. And people are dying by the millions. Karen exchanged glances with her advisors. Ambassador Daniel Carter sat to her right. Admiral Stephen Wright sat to her left. Both men looked grim, but unsurprised. They had predicted this outcome 9 months ago. I sympathize with your situation, Karen said. But I need to understand something, Chancellor. Are you requesting assistance? Or are you requesting that humanity rejoin the Galactic Council? Threven's skin shifted to a color that might have indicated hope. Would Earth consider rejoining the Council? That depends entirely on the terms, Karen said. Earth is willing to help. We have no desire to watch billions of innocent people suffer because their leaders made poor decisions. But we will not return to the old arrangement. We will not be servants, or second-class members, or convenient tools to be used and dismissed. What are your terms? Threven asked. Karen pulled up a document on her screen. She and her advisors had spent weeks preparing this. First, complete restructuring of Council voting procedures. Every member species gets an equal vote, regardless of how long they have been part of the Council. No more hierarchy based on seniority or technological advancement. Agreed, Threven said immediately. Second, the Council's primary mission must be actual peacekeeping and mutual defense. Not territorial expansion, not economic competition, not political maneuvering, protection of civilians, and maintenance of peace. Agreed. Third, all member species must contribute resources to Council operations. No more expecting humans to provide free services while other species profit. Agreed. Karen paused. This next part was going to be harder. Fourth, High Chancellor Vexith must publicly acknowledge humanity's contributions to the Council. He must apologize for his treatment of Earth and admit that his policies led to this disaster. Threvin's skin flickered. High Chancellor Vexith has been removed from office. I know, Karen said. But he is still alive. Still influential. If we are going to rebuild trust, the truth must be acknowledged. The galaxy must understand what really happened here. I will make it happen, Threvin promised. Is there anything else? Yes, Daniel Carter spoke up. Human officers will command the joint military operations against the Krell. Council species will follow human tactical doctrine and coordinate their efforts through human command structures. No exceptions. No special arrangements for proud species who think they know better. Threvin did not hesitate. Agreed. When can you begin deployment? We already have, Admiral Stephen Wright said. Human fleets are moving to defensive positions around critical Council worlds. We will not let more civilians die while politicians argue. But the relief forces will only operate in systems where local governments agree to full cooperation. If a species wants to defend themselves alone, they are welcome to try. Thank you, Threvin said. His relief was obvious. President Miller, I cannot undo the harm that has been done to your people. I cannot erase 80 years of dismissive treatment and casual disrespect, but I can promise you that humanity will never be taken for granted again. We have learned what the galaxy looks like without you. We will not forget that lesson. See that you do not, Karen said. Chancellor, I am authorizing immediate humanitarian assistance. Medical supplies, food, temporary shelter for refugees. The military deployment will follow within 48 hours, but I want that public statement from Vexith before Earth officially rejoins the Council. You will have it, Threvin said. The transmission ended. Karen sat back in her chair and looked at her advisors. Thoughts? The Council is desperate, Daniel said. They will agree to anything right now. The question is whether they will honor these agreements once the crisis is over and they are strong again. That is why we need the public acknowledgement, Karen said. If Vexith admits the truth in front of the entire galaxy, it becomes a matter of historical record. They cannot erase it or rewrite it later. Admiral Wright pulled up a tactical display. Madam President, I have a question. We have known for months that this was coming. We have known the Council would eventually beg for help. Why did we wait so long? Why did we let millions of people suffer before agreeing to assist? It was a fair question. Karen had asked herself the same thing many times over the past 9 months. Because if we had rushed in to help the moment things got difficult, the Council would have learned nothing. They would have gone back to their old ways, taking humanity for granted and dismissing our contributions. This crisis had to get bad enough that they truly understood what they had lost. A hard lesson, Wright said. A necessary one, Karen replied. For 80 years, humanity tried to teach the Council through patience and service. They did not listen, so we taught them through absence instead. And now, maybe, they finally understand. Across the galaxy, Captain Greg Allen received new orders aboard the Defender. Human fleets were mobilizing for the largest coordinated operation in history. Ships that had been patrolling quietly in human space were now moving into Council territory, heading for battlefields and crisis zones. But there was one more task to complete first, a task that would be broadcast across every functioning communication channel in galactic space. Former High Chancellor Vexith stood in an empty Council chamber, facing a camera. He was alone except for a few technicians and security personnel. His mandibles clicked together nervously as he prepared to speak. The broadcast went live. Across hundreds of worlds, billions of beings watched as the architect of humanity's dismissal faced his moment of reckoning. I am Vexith, former High Chancellor of the Galactic Council, he began. His translator rendered his words clearly, without emotion. I am speaking to you today to acknowledge a grave error in judgment. 9 months ago, I led the Council in dismissing humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. I called humans primitives. I laughed when they withdrew from the Council. I said we were better off without them. Vexith paused. For a being without human facial expressions, he still managed to convey shame. I was wrong. Catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. Humanity spent 80 years holding our civilization together. They maintained our networks. They mediated our disputes. They protected our trade routes. They organized our defenses. And they asked for nothing in return except respect and equality. We gave them neither. We took their contributions for granted. We dismissed their expertise. We treated them as servants instead of partners. And when they finally left, we discovered too late what they had been doing for us all these years. The Council is collapsing because we could not see humanity's value until it was gone. 7 worlds have fallen. Millions have died. Our economy is in ruins. And all of this could have been prevented if we had simply treated humans with the respect they deserved. Vexith's mandibles spread wide. I apologize to the people of Earth. I apologize to the humans who served the Council faithfully and received only contempt in return. And I apologize to every being in Council space who is suffering now because of my arrogance. Humanity saved us. We owe them a debt we can never fully repay. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, the message spread through what remained of the communication network. Some beings dismissed it as political theater, but others, especially those who had worked with humans and knew the truth, felt a weight lift from their shoulders. The truth was finally acknowledged. On Earth, President Karen Miller watched the broadcast and nodded. That will do, she said. Admiral Wright, deploy the fleets. Ambassador Carter, prepare the new Council Charter. It is time to rebuild what was broken. And maybe, Daniel Carter said quietly, build something better in its place. Admiral Stephen Wright stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Valiant, and watched the joint fleet assemble. 37 different species had contributed ships to this operation. It was the largest coordinated military force in galactic history, and every single vessel was following human tactical doctrine. Admiral, his communications officer called out. All fleet elements report ready. We are receiving final confirmations from the Keltharan, Vorinthian, and Phyrexian contingents. Stephen pulled up the tactical display. The Krell Empire had pushed deep into Council space, conquering 7 worlds and threatening a dozen more. Their fleet was massive, well-armed, and confident. The Krell had spent decades watching the Council species fight among themselves. They thought they knew how this battle would go. They were about to learn otherwise. Open a channel to all ships, Stephen ordered. All frequencies. All languages. The channel opened. Stephen could feel thousands of crew members across hundreds of ships listening to his words. This is Admiral Wright to all fleet elements. In approximately 2 hours, we will engage the Krell invasion force at Theria Prime. This battle will determine whether we take back our first conquered world, or whether the Krell continue their advance unchecked. I know that many of you are not used to following human command. I know that your species have their own proud military traditions. But today, we fight as one fleet, using one strategy, pursuing one goal. We fight to protect civilians and liberate the oppressed. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because it is right. Stephen paused. The Krell expect us to fight like the old Council. They expect competition between our ships, each species trying to claim the victory for themselves. They expect us to argue over tactics while they destroy us one by one. We are going to disappoint them. Humanity has a saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Today, we stand united. Right out. The channel closed. Stephen looked at his tactical officer, Commander Patricia Hayes. She had transferred from the Defender to serve on his flagship, bringing her expertise to the largest operation humanity had ever commanded. What do you think, Commander? Stephen asked. Will they follow the plan? Patricia studied the fleet formation on her display. They do not have much choice, sir. Their own strategies failed against the Krell. If they want to win, they need to trust us. Trust, Stephen repeated. Strange thing to ask from species that spent 80 years dismissing our expertise. They are learning, sir. Patricia said. The hard way. But they are learning. The fleet moved into position. Human coordination vessels positioned themselves throughout the formation, ensuring that every ship could communicate quickly and clearly. Human tactical officers had spent the past 3 weeks training the other species' crews in coordinated attack patterns and defensive formations. It had not been easy. Council species were used to independent action, each ship fighting for individual glory. The concept of sacrificing personal achievement for collective success was foreign to most of them, but they were desperate enough to try. On the surface of Theria Prime, the Krell occupation force was well established. 3 billion civilians lived under hostile control, subject to Krell laws and Krell exploitation. Captain Greg Allen commanded a special operations group tasked with evacuating key resistance leaders before the main battle began. His ship, the Defender, slipped through the Krell blockade using stealth technology. The Council species had dismissed human stealth systems as primitive, but those systems were designed by people who understood that sometimes the best technology was the one your enemy did not expect. Approaching extraction point, his pilot reported. Krell patrols are thick, but we are not being scanned. Greg checked his tactical board. Boarding team, prepare for surface operations. Remember, we are here for the resistance leaders only. Get in. Grab them. Get out. No heroics. The Defender touched down in a ruined industrial sector. The boarding team deployed quickly, moving through damaged buildings to reach the hidden resistance base. Greg watched their progress on his command screen, ready to pull them out at the first sign of trouble. 20 minutes later, the team returned with 11 Therian civilians. They were thin, exhausted, and traumatized by months of occupation. But their eyes showed fierce determination. One of them, a female Therian named Kelsa, approached Greg on the bridge. "You are human," she said. Her translator made her voice sound surprised. "That is right," Greg confirmed. "The Krell told us that humans abandoned the Council, that you left us to suffer. They said humanity only cared about themselves." Kelsa looked around the bridge, at the human crew working efficiently at their stations. "But you came back. Why?" Greg considered the question. "Because leaving was about teaching the Council a lesson, not about abandoning innocence. You did not dismiss humanity, your leaders did, and now we are here to fix their mistakes." "Will you win?" Kelsa asked. "The Krell fleet is very strong." "We will win," Greg said with confidence. "Because we are not fighting alone anymore. And because the Krell have never faced humanity when we are truly committed to protecting someone." In orbit, Admiral Wright's fleet engaged the Krell forces. The enemy ships moved with practiced coordination, expecting the Council fleet to fragment and scatter as usual. Instead, they found a unified wall of firepower that moved with mechanical precision. Human tactical doctrine emphasized 3 principles: protect civilians, minimize casualties, and offer surrender terms. The Krell had no experience with any of these concepts. They were conquerors who respected only strength. They were about to learn about a different kind of strength. "All batteries, targeted fire on the Krell command ship," Wright ordered. "Navigation. Keep the fleet in formation. I want overlapping fields of fire, covering every angle." The combined fleet opened fire. Energy weapons from 37 different species converged on the Krell flagship, overwhelming its shields in seconds. The massive ship tried to maneuver away, but human coordination had positioned blocking forces exactly where the Krell would try to retreat. "They are trapped," Patricia reported. "Krell fleet is attempting to break formation." "Do not let them," Wright ordered. "All ships, maintain formation and continue the advance. Communications, open a channel to the Krell commander." The channel opened reluctantly. The Krell commander appeared on screen. A heavily armored being with multiple weapon limbs. His translator sounded aggressive even when speaking normally. "Human commander," the Krell said. "You fight well, but you cannot win. We are Krell. We do not surrender." "Then you will die," Wright said simply. "And for what? You have already lost this battle." Your flagship is disabled. Your fleet is surrounded. You can either surrender and live, or you can fight and die. Choose quickly. The Krell commander's weapons shifted, a sign of agitation. The Krell Empire will avenge this defeat. More ships will come. Let them come, Wright replied. And when they arrive, they will face the same choice. Surrender or die. Peace or war. The Council has changed, Commander. We do not fight for conquest anymore. We fight to protect, but we will fight as long as necessary. There was a long pause. Then, for the first time in Krell history, a fleet commander gave the order to stand down. The Krell ships powered down their weapons and accepted Council custody. Across the communication channels, there was stunned silence. Then cheering erupted from the combined fleet. They had won. Not through superior numbers or better technology, but through coordination and discipline and the willingness to work together, and they had won because humans had taught them how. On Earth, Ambassador Daniel Carter prepared for his return to the Galactic Council. But this time, he would not be walking into a chamber that dismissed humanity's worth. This time, he would be helping to write a new charter that enshrined the principles humanity had always valued. President Karen Miller reviewed the final draft of the charter with him. Equal voting rights for all members, she read. Mandatory contribution of resources to common defense. Protection of civilians as the primary mission. Peaceful dispute resolution required before any military action. And a human-designed coordination system for all Council operations. It is everything we wanted 80 years ago, Daniel said. Everything we asked for and were denied. We should not have had to leave to get it, Karen said. But sometimes people do not value what they have until it is gone. Do you think it will last? Daniel asked. Once the crisis is over, once the Krell are fully defeated, will the Council honor these principles? Or will they slip back into old habits? Karen considered the question carefully. Some will try to go back to the old ways. Pride and prejudice do not disappear overnight. But enough of them have learned the lesson. Enough of them have seen what happens when they take humanity for granted, and we will be there to remind them. Months passed. The Krell were pushed back, then offered generous peace terms that shocked them into actual negotiation. Several Krell commanders, impressed by human mercy and pragmatism, defected and shared intelligence about their empire's internal divisions. What could have been a long, bloody war became a diplomatic success story. The reformed Galactic Council met for the first time in the rebuilt chambers. Every species had an equal vote now. Every member contributed resources, and human mediators sat at the center of every major decision. Not because they demanded it, but because everyone else insisted on it. Councillor Threven, now serving as the Council's diplomatic coordinator, approached Ambassador Carter after the first session. It is different, he said. The entire atmosphere has changed. People are actually listening to each other. That is what happens when you build a system on cooperation instead of hierarchy, Daniel said. It is not perfect. There are still arguments and disagreements. But now we solve them with words instead of weapons. Thanks to humanity, Threven said. Thanks to everyone who chose to change, Daniel corrected. Humanity showed you a better way. But you had to choose to follow it. At a refugee settlement on Theria Prime, Captain Greg Allen walked among the civilians who were returning to their homes. The planet was free again, liberated by the combined fleet. The Krell occupation had ended, and rebuilding had begun. A young Therian child approached him. She could not have been more than 6 years old in human terms. She looked up at Greg with large, curious eyes. Are you a human? She asked. I am, Greg confirmed, kneeling down to her level. My mother says humans saved us. She says you came back even though you did not have to. Why did you come back? Why did you come back? Greg thought about all the complicated political and strategic reasons. He thought about council politics and diplomatic negotiations and military necessity. Then he looked at this child who just wanted a simple answer to a simple question. Because someone has to give a damn, he said gently. Because protecting people is the right thing to do. even when those people did not treat you well. Because being strong means helping those who are weaker, not dominating them. The child seemed to think about this. When I grow up, I want to be like humans. I want to help people too. Greg smiled. Then you are already on the right path. He stood up and looked around at the settlement. Dozens of species worked together, rebuilding what the Krell had destroyed. Human engineers taught their skills to others. Human mediators helped resolve disputes about resources and housing. Human medical teams treated injuries without caring about species or status. This was what humanity had always wanted to build. Not an empire, not dominance, but a community where strength meant protection instead of conquest, where power meant responsibility instead of privilege. The day humans left the Galactic Council was indeed the day everything fell apart. But it was also the day that led to something better. A council built on cooperation instead of hierarchy. A galaxy that valued peace over pride. A civilization that finally understood what humans had been trying to teach them all along. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood in the council chambers and looked out at the assembled delegates. Species that had dismissed humanity for 80 years now looked to humans for guidance. It was satisfying in a way, but also sobering. They had not wanted power over others. They had just wanted to be respected for what they contributed. Ambassador Carter, a new delegate, called out. The Yevith Confederation wishes to join the council. They are requesting human mediators to help them integrate. Daniel nodded. Send them the standard welcome package and assign a mediation team. Make sure they understand the new council principles from the start. Understand. This was the future now. Not humans ruling over others, but humans helping others learn to work together. It was harder than dominating through force. It required patience and empathy, and the willingness to teach the same lessons over and over again. But it was worth it, because at the end of the day, this was what made humanity special. Not their weapons, or their technology, or their skills at war, but their fundamental belief that everyone deserved protection, that cooperation was better than competition, and that true strength meant lifting others up instead of keeping them down. The day humans left was the day the galaxy learned what it had been taking for granted, and the day humans returned was the day a new foundation was laid. A foundation built on principles that would last because they had been earned through suffering and proven through absence. In a small park on Earth, former High Chancellor Vexith met with President Karen Miller for a private conversation. The once proud leader looked diminished now, his political career destroyed by his own arrogance. But he had requested this meeting, and Karen had agreed to hear him out. President Miller, Vexith said quietly, I wanted to thank you personally for humanity's assistance. You saved countless lives, including those of my own species. We did what was necessary, Karen said. What we have always tried to do. I know, Vexith said. That is what I failed to understand. I thought strength meant never showing weakness. I thought leadership meant never admitting error. I thought civilization meant having the best technology and the oldest traditions. His mandibles clicked together softly. I was wrong about everything. Strength is helping others even when they have wronged you. Leadership is accepting responsibility for mistakes. Civilization is built on cooperation and mercy, not dominance and pride. You learned, Karen said. That is more than many leaders ever do. I learned too late, Vexith replied. But perhaps my failure can serve as a lesson for others. The day I convinced the Council to dismiss humanity was the day I destroyed everything we had built. I hope future leaders remember that. Karen looked at the former Chancellor with something like sympathy. The galaxy remembers, Vexith. Your public statement made sure of that. It was not easy for you, I know. But it was necessary, and it was brave. They sat in silence for a moment. Two leaders from different worlds, reflecting on how close galactic civilization had come to complete collapse. And how humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers, had been the glue holding it all together. The day humans left the Galactic Council was the day everything fell apart. But it was also the day that taught the galaxy its most important lesson, and in the end, That lesson built something stronger than what had existed before, a true alliance of equals, working together not because they had to, but because they finally understood why they should.